Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
The first one is titled, "Don't Want to Hand Over Your Drink Before Driving a Bus of Teenagers Through the Mountains?" One time my class, 18 to 19-year-old boys, went on a cultural trip. It was to a destination up steep mountains, and plenty of very up, down and sharp turn, terrifying roads with sheer drops and not so practical railing, and not even that sometimes. What made it even more terrifying, by about 100-fold, was our driver. He was an absolute nutcase who would crack down these roads at top speed, not slowing for blind corners. In a bus. Basically a free roam roller coaster. Seriously, thinking back, it was a pure miracle this ex-army guy never crashed in all his years of driving our class and doing these sorts of trips, and insane he was never fired. It was in a pretty crazy country. There's lots of mountainous terrain and winding roads with steep drops, and it's not too rare to see the wreck of a car that has fallen off at the bottom of one of these drops, but it hadn't been practical yet to remove. I know he'd been there a while, given how well he knew the roads. He must have done the trip dozens of times, but I don't know how long he stayed after I left. Thankfully, most of the time our trips weren't on dangerous roads, but he always made me feel uneasy with his very intense driving. Anyway. So we are at our destination and still have to make our way home when the trip is over. At night. Without any real street lights on most of this. As we are milling around, I notice the driver has a plastic cup full to the brim with a 45% 90 proof spirit. I promise you I am not exaggerating. He was even showing off about it. I can take my drink, but that amount would have me smashed off my face. A fifth of it was probably way beyond the legal limit. I kid you not, this guy is planning on drinking the whole lot and had no clue what could possibly be wrong with that. Drunk driving is definitely illegal in this country, and it's not a corrupt country, but it's also a pretty laid-back country, and also he is our only driver home and everyone likes him and... I don't know, it was a very surreal situation. I go over and, being a 19-year-old talking to an ex-military nutcase who doesn't speak English very well, I try my best to make him realize, without offending him, that he shouldn't be drinking, that it's dangerous, etc. He's not having any of it, and he's in a very jovial mood, laughing me off. For a while it seems like I am the only one who notices or cares. As I said, it was very surreal. I can't even get our teachers to go up to him because they are not quite sure what to do either. So fine, he wants to keep the drink? I go to everyone I can find, and ask them all to go grab a plastic up and ask him if they can have some of his drink, in a party spirit. He's from the type of culture that if someone comes over with a smile and big happy greeting and handshake and holds out a cup asking for a bit of your alcoholic beverage, you would be compelled to pour him a generous amount with a reciprocal pat on the back and hearty laugh. It seems, after all, I am not the only one terrified by this prospect, yet too awkward to make a scene, because in no time, he's given away his entire cup, and the bottle itself has disappeared. I saw he seemed quite sad after this, and I actually felt a little sorry for him, but not regretful. I think he still did manage to get a few sips in, because I gained a few nice early grey hairs from the return trip, but thankfully I am still here to tell the tale. I am proud of my younger self for that quick thinking that very likely saved the lives of 50 or so people, without causing the slightest amount of fuss, or thanks 19-year-olds, eh? The next one is titled, "Prove to my manager that it's better to warn customers of closing time." I used to work at a store that was open until 2 a.m. every night of the week, so as you can imagine, when 2 a.m. rolled around I was always ready to get out of there. Around 1:45 a.m., I would walk around and let each customer know individually that the store was closing in 15 minutes, and ask them if they needed help finding anything before then. I did this for about 4 months working there and never had a problem, other than the occasional super rude customer who would completely ignore me and keep shopping until like 2:30, 3 or whatever. Or occasionally, especially on weekends, drunk people would come in after 2 a.m. and just ignore that we were closed, because we weren't allowed to lock the door or turn anyone away. Usually I was alone by 1:45 since business really slows down, but one night my manager was still there. When she saw me go and tell customers the store was closing in 15 minutes, she was upset. She told me I could never tell a customer the store was closing. She said it was incredibly rude and put too much pressure on them. Fast forward to a few weeks later. I have still been giving customers a 15-minute heads up, because frankly I don't think it's rude to tell someone your store is about to close, especially at 2 a.m. Here is when I see my opportunity. A woman had come in around 12 a.m. She seemed pretty out of it, and was wandering around the store aimlessly this whole time, but occasionally bringing something to the counter, asking me to hold it, then coming back and asking me to put it back because she changed her mind. I had the feeling she could spend all night wandering around the store, so I decided that this would be the one customer I wouldn't warn about closing. 2 a.m. rolls around and I say nothing, and I proceed to say nothing all the way until 4:45 a.m. when she finally leaves the store. I literally got a call at 8 a.m. the next day from my manager, furious that I had closed the store almost at 5 a.m. I innocently told her that the woman was still busy shopping the whole time, and I remind her that it's extremely rude to tell a customer that the store is closed. The next night when I went in for my shift, they had made the 15-minute warning a universal rule. We were all supposed to warn customers the store was closing, plus we were supposed to turn people away if they showed up after 2 a.m. Score. Afterward I admitted to my other coworkers I had done it intentionally to show management how dumb their decision was, and I'm glad I did it because we never had to let another drunk teenager into the store after 2 a.m. again. The next one is titled, "Oh, I have to take the whole week off?" Okay. So years ago I worked at a big coffee chain store, I'm sure you can guess. For context purposes, I was working at a mall location and they needed help at another store, so I went to the other store for a while. They wanted to keep me, but never put a transfer in at the store I was helping at. My original store manager was emailing my current store manager weekly asking if he's putting in the transfer, and if not, they need me back at the mall location. So, I've wanted my Madonna pierced for who knows how long, and I was finally able to get it done, so I did. The barbell that I got for it was very long. I had a piercing that got embedded because my barbell wasn't long enough, and had to get it surgically removed, so I was being careful. I left it in while it was healing, and the first few days of work, not one person said anything to me about it. About 3 days in, my coworker complained to my current store manager about my piercing because she had a lip piercing that was complained about, and she didn't think that was fair. My store manager pulled me into the back room to talk to me about it, and I told him basically my history, and that because it's so long there is no way I can just slap a band-aid on it till it healed. He got frustrated with me, and basically called my original store manager to tattle on me. He hands me the phone, and she says, "Can you please just take the piercing out?" I told her I couldn't because it's still healing. After the phone call, he then told me that he was going to take me off the schedule for the rest of the week because I couldn't take it out, and that was fine. About 4 days later, my original store manager called me and basically told me they were firing a manager, and asked if I could cover the remainder of his shifts that week at the mall. I told her that my piercing was pretty much healed and that I could definitely pick up a shift. The day I went to work at my original store, I got a call from my current store manager asking if I could pick up a shift that day, and my response was, "Sorry, I already picked up a shift today at the mall." He was really upset about it, and both the store managers butted heads until I was back at my original store, and dude ended up getting a demotion and a forced transfer because he didn't know how to run a store. The next one is titled, "That's Not Your Job, Okay." I used to work for a company that offered degrees you could do parallel to your job at a university. For example, you could do a master's degree in business part-time and still work. Often the companies would pay for their workers' studies. I was in marketing and was basically alone. I had a boss, who called herself head of marketing, but had clearly no idea what she was doing. On top of this, she worked only part-time, and would spend her time walking around telling everyone how much she had to do instead of doing her job. At some point, she was told to do a flyer for a new program we wanted to offer. Not being able to work with InDesign or Photoshop, she told me to do it and give her the files she could send to the printer. However, since it's her project and she didn't want the big boss to know I did her work for her, she told me that I should just use the pictures and texts she provided, and make it look exactly the way she had pieced it together in a PowerPoint file. She regularly did this, and it really upset me. So I did exactly what she asked. I used her text, which was full of typos, used the pictures which were way too small for print, and also had watermarks in them since she only downloaded the preview pics from the stock website. So I designed it to look how she had envisioned it, put the text in without correcting any of it, turned it into a print PDF and sent it to her. She claimed she had looked at it and it was perfect, but since she didn't have the time, yeah, sure. I should send it off to the printer. Well, 1 week later the flyers arrived, just in time for the first big event where we needed them. And they looked like crap. Pixelated pictures with watermarks, typos in the headline and text, you get the picture. Our big boss was furious, and she tried to blame it on me. However, I had saved all our conversations and all the original files she gave me, and just handed all that over before going about my work. I quit a few months afterwards. As far as I know, she's still working there. However, she's not head of anymore, and has to show everything she does to 2 superiors now. The next one is titled, Waitress Complies with Manager's Unsanitary Decision. This actually my mother-in-law's story. It occurred in the late 70s. She was working as a waitress in a small restaurant. One day during the lunch rush she drops a plate of food on the floor in the kitchen. She asks the cook to prep a replacement. When the manager comes over, picks up the food off of the floor, puts it back on the plate and tells her that there is nothing wrong with it and to go serve it. She protests, but it's been on the floor. The manager tells her, go serve this plate or you're fired. So, she takes the order out to the table and sets it down in front of the customer and announces loudly enough that the entire restaurant can hear, here's your food, but I wouldn't eat it if I were you. I dropped it on the floor, but my manager told me to serve it to you anyway. She turns around, toodles back over to her manager, smiles at him, and says, I quit. As she turns around to leave, the entire dining room is pushing back from their tables and leaving without paying. The next one is titled, You Want Me to Clock Out Earlier? Alright then. A few years ago, I worked at a sandwich shop named after an underground train system. You may have heard of these restaurants. I worked part-time in the afternoons because I had another job that I worked early mornings at. I had a ton of work to do in those shifts, because I was the only one there. Most days the people before me would leave tons of dishes to clean in the sink, and there was a lot of cleaning to do before closing. The problem was that it would get really busy at nights because it was in a small town with no other fast food options to compete. So while we closed at 8, it would take me sometimes up to an hour to finish closing up. One day the owners, complete psychopaths, told me I needed to be done with everything and clocked out by 8:15. I tried explaining that there was too much to do, but they were adamant. They were very clear to me that it was never busy in the evenings. Complete crap. Remember, I worked those hours and there was plenty of time to get most of the closing work done before 8. Keep in mind also that I was making $7.75 an hour working there. Well, since me clocking out at 8:15 was clearly the most important thing to them, that's exactly what I did. I would get everything done that I could, but once it was 8:15, I would clock out, regardless of what was left. When I was just about to quit, they told me they had other workers who wanted more hours and they had to let me go. I all but thanked them for letting me go, and got a better paying job afterwards. The next one is titled, You Want to Work Off Hours? Go ahead, but my crew won't help. I used to work at a big US chain pharmacy in the front. We had an assistant manager who was generally miserable with her own life. She would clock out after 8 hours each day and then continue to work usually until she decided to go home. Sometimes she would be there from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. because she really had no life. This was all of course known but not discussed by the store manager. Of course he'll take free labor. I was a floor manager at the time and it upset me that she did this. She would start doing things that I had already started, distract my crew, walk behind me and nitpick me, while also complaining about anything and everything, including the customers standing right behind her. Finally I had enough. I was working my usual closing shift, 2 to 10 p.m, and she was supposed to clock out and go home at 4, but of course she clocked out and stayed. We usually started taking trash out from the pile in the back to the dumpster around 5 when things up front started to slow down. Everyone except one cashier would just start to gravitate to the back. I was the first one to walk back, and saw her doing the trash. It was an especially huge pile that day because it was our delivery day. I stood on the other side of the door and told everyone they are not to go back and help her. If she wants to throw trash away on her own time, that's her decision, but we will not help. It took her until about 8 p.m. She had asked me before she left why no one helped. I told her the above. My next shift, the store manager let me know that all of my closing shifts from now on she needs to clock out and go home at 4, and if she doesn't to call him and he'll shoo her away. The next one is titled, Of course he orders the one thing on the menu I told him not to. Years ago I worked at a Portuguese restaurant. Waiting tables is not something I ever want to do again. It's an honest job, but people are the worst. Sure, some people are lovely and treat you like an actual human being, but some people can act so horrendous that it can make one question humanity. Anyways, on to the story. This happened during summertime. The restaurant I worked at had an outdoor seating area. A table gets seated in my area and I approach them to take their order. One guy asks me what meat dish I would recommend. I tell him that the rodizio is good, as is the sirloin. He asks me about the steak shish kebab. I tell him that I would not recommend this dish, it's dry and doesn't taste well. He tells me that he would try it. I ask him if he's sure because most people try to send it back. He says that yes, he's sure. Fair enough. I put the order in. The food gets served to his table and lo and behold, he's not enjoying his dish. He doesn't have the balls to admit his mistake, so he gets the attention of another server and tells him that I messed up the order and he never ordered the shish kebab. My coworker tells me this. I go to his table and ask him what the problem is. He tells me that the dish isn't good and that he wants to order something else. I tell him that I warned him this would happen and that I would gladly retake his order, but the shish kebab would not be taken off the bill. He didn't take to this kindly. In the end, my manager agreed to take it off the bill, but I took delight in me telling him I told you so. Small victories, I guess. The last one is titled, I just ducked over my family. To give you some background, I'm 26 years old. I've been taking care of my family my whole life, while they really never gave anything back in return. Especially the last 8 years. When I turned 18/19 of a year old, my grandparents and my dad passed away. All the expectations were put on me to go get a job, take care of my grandparents, then their place once they passed away until we could sell it. And basically handle all the stresses and responsibilities while my mum coddled my younger brother, 23 now, and they sat around watching TV all day because they couldn't handle it. Even up until recently, whenever they needed money for something, or a bill, or whatever, I'd be the one to go get a job, a second job, sell some of my crap while they did nothing except say, oh, thanks. Anyways, fast forward to today. I'm still living at home, taking care of my mum and brother. My mum finally got a part-time job, only because she wasted all her inheritance money, and has been working for a while. About a month ago, my brother gets a job. Yay, good for him. He tells me he's planning to move out with his girlfriend in about 6 to 12 months because he wants to get out on his own. I have no problem with that, so long as we all have plan. The bills being split 3 ways is fine, but if one of us leaves, it's gonna mess everything up for the other 2 people, unless we have something set up. A week later he moves out. Then he denies ever saying any of that. Gets upset at me because even though I'm happy for him, it sucks cause he's kind of ducking things up for us. He calls me a butthole, tells me to duck off, and cuts me out of his life since I don't do crap, even though I've been taking care of both their butts the last 8 years while he sits in his room all day eating taquitos and playing MapleStory. He also takes his mum's car, because for some dumb reason she put the car in his name, paid it off, and is keeping him on her insurance. Even though she doesn't have a car and has to walk to work now. She doesn't even get mad, or try to talk to him, she lets him do whatever cause apparently he's the good kid or whatever. So now we're in a bit of a crisis because we've got to figure out to cover his 1/3 road of everything. At this point I should also mention our bills are way higher than they should be because during one of the times I was living on my own. My mum apparently forgot to pay some of her bills for like 8 months. Which I should also mention, during the times I lived on my own I was always paid for my costs. Plus gave her money to help with her own bills, and then she would still try to mooch extra money out of me by bullshitting me about some bill or whatever and then giving that money to my brother or buying cigarettes. Anyways, back to the present. I'm now scrambling for a second job. I stay up about 3 days straight, with barely 2 to 3 hours of sleep per night, applying for jobs online, in person, going to interviews, etc. etc. What's my mum doing? Watching TV and smoking e-cigs. I get on her butt to do something and she gives me the same answer she's given me the last 8 years, she'll sell something, or borrow money from a neighbor. Which never happens. At this point I should also mention she's kind of a hoarder and has all my grandparents and my dad's crap in the garage and backyard. Apparently she can't sell the stuff yet, which she's been saying since 2005 because she needs a digital camera. Even though both my girlfriend and I have explained to her hundreds of times that we have cameras on our phones, there's eBay apps. It takes 2 ducking seconds, but regardless, most of that stuff is crap anyways save for a few personal items and some jewelry. And she should just get off her butt and get another damn job. So I'm driving to work last night and I'm fuming. But I'm looking at everything objectively. Realistically, we're behind on rent, which again, my mum doesn't care about. Oh, our landlord's nice, she doesn't mind. Oh, there was problems with this place before we moved in, so it's okay if we're little short. Our rent is due on the 1st. We got an extension to the 5th. Then the 8th. Then the 15th. My mum's planning to pay this month on the 24th. Every month I've always had my share, plus more, covered. It's always on her, or my brother's end that the money isn't there. So I'm looking at this and I'm like, there's no ducking way I can do this. Even if I get this month, what about next month? And the month after that? I mean, yeah, I already work 7 days a week, I could get a 3rd, 4th, 5th job, but then I wouldn't have time to go EMT school. I'd be making just enough to cover everything, but I wouldn't have any extra money to get myself out and into something better. And it's at this point I say, duck it. I'm not paying a single penny more. I've got several offers from friends to move in with them for 1/3 road of what I'm paying now, no cost for utilities or anything else. I'm good to go. I'm taking my money and get the hell of. But I'm not a complete asshole, not just yet anyways. This is still going to benefit my mum as well because if she's not paying anything either she can save up her money. She's probably got 30 to 90 days to get the fudge out of here, and even then she could milk that by squatting or whatever. That's thousands of dollars to get another place, get a cheap car, whatever, get her crap together. She's never really had to figure things out on her own because me, or someone else would always fix everything. Here's where my revenge comes in, I'm not on the lease. Years ago, when I was living on my own, my mum wanted me to co-sign on a lease with her. And she swore up and down that it wouldn't affect anything, and that she'd handle everything, but I didn't buy it. My brother, however, did. So I'm not liable for anything. I'm leaving, and they can have fun dealing with clearing out all of mum's crap. Oh, and they're also required to have a professional cleaner come in and clean before they leave as well. Which could be a bit costly considering my mum has a few cats that she lets do whatever they want and doesn't care. They piss on something or tear on the carpet and oh well, the fence was kind of messed up when we got here. I don't think the landlord will care. There are wear and tear laws too, so I don't think she expects it to be immaculate or anything. And I'd offer to help by getting a U-Haul truck to get all their crap out, or help pay for a professional cleaning, but I'm not on the lease. Oh, and my brother just told me to duck off and cut me out of his life a week ago while my mum just sits around not doing anything to fix the situation like she always does. So now they can both duck off and deal with it. Thanks for listening.